Brigitte Gabriel is one of the leading terrorism experts in the world, providing information and analysis on the rise of global Islamic terrorism. She lectures nationally and internationally about terrorism and current affairs. Brigitte's expertise is sought after by world and business leaders. She has addressed the Australian Prime Minister, members of the British Parliament, House of Commons, members of the United States Congress, the Pentagon, the Joint Forces Staff College, the U.S. Special Operations Command, the U.S. Asymmetric Warfare Group, the FBI, and many others. She serves on the board of advisors of the Intelligence Summit. In addition, Ms. Gabriel is a regular guest analyst on the Fox News Channel, CNN, and MSNBC. I did say if you get on MSNBC, I hope they paid you well. I don't even watch that channel. Just had to throw that in there. Anyhow. Along with various radio stations daily across America, Ms. Gabriel is founder, president, and CEO of Act for America, the largest grassroots citizens action network dedicated to preserving national security and combating Islamic supremacy. She's the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, Because They Hate, A Survivor of Islamic Terror Warns America, and the second book, They Must Be Stopped, Why We Must Defeat Radical Islam and How We Can Do It. Ms. Gabriela is named one of the top 50 most prominent speakers in America. She speaks Arabic, French, English, and Hebrew. I would like for you to give a warm Tampa Bay welcome to Ms. Brigitte Gabriel. Come on, somebody, let's make her feel welcome here in Largo, Florida.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate you coming. And thank you for ordering good weather. Coming from Virginia, I really appreciate the sunshine. It's truly so wonderful to be here tonight. You know, people ask me all the time when I travel, Brigitte, don't you get depressed talking about national security and terrorism and radical Islam all the time? And I say, of course I do from time to time. I'm only human like everybody else. But do you know what keeps me so energized and so excited and so happy is when I travel our beautiful country and I meet wonderful people like you who take the time out of their busy schedule to come here and hear me share about what's happening in our country and what we can do as citizens to defend our country. You are truly my inspiration. So thank you for honoring me with your presence tonight. You lift my spirit. Thank you. I am here tonight to talk about a very difficult subject, and that is the issue of the rise of radical Islam and how that affects our national security. The issue of radical Islam and national security is not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue, it's not a libertarian issue. The national security is an American issue. It affects every single one of us. As I'm speaking to you right here tonight, there are 44 conflicts around the world between Muslims and non-Muslims, regardless what the nationality of these non-Muslims is, regardless what language they speak, regardless what color their skin is. 44 conflicts around the world. Radical Islam is on the rise. And while we here in America hear only about what's happening in Iraq or in Afghanistan or in Pakistan because it affects us directly, most people don't pay attention to what's happening in Chad, what's happened in Djibouti last week, what happened in Mali. If it wasn't for the French going in and bombing Mali, and then the radical Islamists hijacking or kidnapping the Western hostages in Algeria, you wouldn't even have heard what happened in Mali. Last year, exactly in March, half the country of Mali fell in the hands of radical Islamists like the Taliban who instituted immediately Sharia law. Most Americans didn't even hear about it. America has been attacked by radical Islam since 1979 under different administrations, regardless whether that administration was Republican or Democrat. America was attacked in 1979 under the Carter administration, a Democrat, with the hostages in Iran. America was attacked again in 1983 under Ronald Reagan, a Republican, with the blowing up of the Marines in Lebanon. America was attacked again under the George Bush Sr. administration. America was attacked again under the Clinton administration, a Democrat. It was actually under President Clinton that the World Trade Center was attacked the first time in 1993. It was also under President Clinton that the Taliban trained 10,000 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. These people were not being trained for entertainment. They were being trained to attack the United States of America. At that time, George Bush and Dick Cheney were not even a blurb on the political American landscape. And then, of course, we were attacked again in 2001. And then people started saying, well, if we just get rid of President Bush and elect President Obama, all our sins are going to be forgiven and everybody's going to sing Kumbaya. Well, that obviously did not happen. Because 2 days after President Obama became president, Al-Qaeda issued a press release saying, we continue our jihad against the United States, regardless who lives in the White House. And since President Obama became president, we have arrested on American soil in the last 4 years 226 homegrown terrorists. 226. 186 of them were Muslims. Now, we have a problem in the United States when a faith-based group that accounts for less than 2% of the American population is responsible for over 80% of terrorist attacks and terrorist plots against the United States. That is an issue that we must discuss. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat because it affects our country. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about the issue of national security and terrorism. And the reason why, it's because it has affected my life personally. You see, my 9/11 happened to me in 1975, when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded as they shouted Allahu Akbar in Lebanon. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed wounded, going from one surgery to another, hooked up to IVs in both arms, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. Whether I practiced my religion or not, it was irrelevant in my enemy's eyes. I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home. But my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter underground in an 8-by-10 room without electricity, without water, and very little food. To get some food, my mother and I would crawl under the bombs, and we would dig out dandelions and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter because it was the only greenery we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl to a nearby spring to get the water, where my mother had to use her stocking on top of the gallon of water to catch all the rocks and all the dirt so we can drink the water. And every time we left our bomb shelter to get some water, we would say our last goodbyes because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead because we were surrounded by Islamic snipers shooting at us. And this became my existence. I lived in that bomb shelter for 7 years, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth, trying to survive, fearing for my life, surrounded by Islamic radicals waiting to get into our town and kill us. When we first went into the bomb shelter, we thought it's going to be a 2-week ordeal. My daddy would say, oh, you know, all the Western nations in the world are going to wake up and see what the radical Islamists are doing to the country in Lebanon. They're going to see the massacres of the Christians being massacred by the thousands. America is going to come and save the Christians of Lebanon. France, Britain, Australia, Canada, all these big Christian nations are going to come and see what radical Islam is doing in Lebanon. And nobody came. 3 years went by. I remember at the age of 13 years old, we were in the bomb shelter, and one of our Christian militia friends, guys who were protecting us, stopped by. And he said, Brigitte, I just want you to know that we heard a lot of chatter on the radios tonight. And we know that the Islamists are launching a major attack against our town. And he said, if I don't see you tomorrow, I want to wish you a merciful death. And he gave me a hug and he left. And I remember at the age of 13 years old, putting on my Easter dress, my Sunday best, because I wanted to look pretty when I'm dead, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. And I remember sobbing as my mother combed my long black hair down to my hips and tied a white ribbon in my hair that matched the white flowers in my dress. As I sobbed, begging her, I don't want to die. I'm only 13 years old. I don't want to die. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter, and my father started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And we started praying. And my parents said to me, if they come to slaughter us tonight, we'll create a distraction so you can run away. You just run towards the Israeli border and don't look back. Because you see, we lived on the border with Israel, 5 kilometers from the border. Because we knew if we run to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are not going to slaughter us because we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. Thank God I did not have to make that difficult decision that night. Because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and established the security zone and kicked out the Islamic terrorists away from our town and set up artillery bases on the hills surrounding our town so we can survive, at least without knowing that they're going to come slaughter us. And this is how we continued living until 1982. When Israel came in physically into Lebanon, and Israel started working with the Christians in Lebanon, trying to help the Christians take back their democracy and kick out the radical Islamic element that has taken control of the country in Lebanon at that time. Because by 1982, we had 11 Islamic radical organizations operating out of Lebanon, including the PLO. And that's when we came out of our bomb shelters and back to rebuilding our lives. I ended up moving to Israel in 1984 and working as news anchor for World News in the Middle East, covering world events and reporting on world activities and especially on terrorist activities. That was in the 80s, from 1984 till 1989. That's when we started seeing a true rise of terrorist attacks around the world. And as I reported on world events night after night, I started realizing that there was a pattern developing. Because no matter where the terrorist activity took place or the terrorist attack, it didn't matter on what continent it took place. The name of the perpetrators were always Muslims. Ahmed, Muhammad, Hussein, Ali. The name of the victims were always Westerners, Christians and Jews. Terry Waite, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Achille Lauro, the TWA flights, the Panam flights. And I started realizing that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Muslim Middle East trying to kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem. But the world was not paying attention. The world was not connecting the dots. And isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report said to us? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know that Al-Qaeda wants to attack the United States. After all, we have never been faced with an enemy that is so open. They tell us exactly what they want to do, what their end goal is. They don't have hidden agendas. They not only issue press releases about what they want to do to us, they put it up on the internet, and they even record videos and send them to Al Jazeera to air worldwide. But we chose to bury our head in the sand and ignore the problems. We knew Al-Qaeda wanted to attack the United States. After all, they attacked the United States the first time in 1993 with the bombings of the World Trade Center. The only difference between the attacks of 1993 and 2001 is the buildings did not come down. They attacked the Kubar Towers in 1995. They attacked our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1997. They attacked the USS Cole. And then immediately after that, they came back and re-attacked the World Trade Center in 2001, this time bringing the buildings down, killing almost 3,000 Americans and attacking the Pentagon. It's not that we did not know that Al-Qaeda is committed to fighting and declaring war on the United States. We chose to ignore the problem. We were apathetic. Our enemy knew that we had such apathy that they were so confident, we were so asleep, that they came back and re-attacked the exact same location 8 years later. That's how confident they were of our apathy and our ignorance. And on September 12th, we all were watching television, and all the psychobabble and the psychoanalysts came on television and started talking about, why do they hate us? What did we do to offend the Islamic world? They hate us because we support Israel. They hate us because we are in the Middle East. That's why they hate us. That's what all the psychoanalysts were talking about on television. But you cannot believe how far that is from reality. And in order for you to understand what has been driving this rise of radicalism around the world, you have to understand what one organization stands for that launched all these terrorist organizations. And that organization is the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, you've heard the name of the Muslim Brotherhood a lot on television, especially in the last 2 years, because of the supposedly Arab Spring and the rise of the supposedly moderates in Egypt, who overthrew the government. The Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest Islamic terrorist organization in the world, founded in 1928, and has 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda and Hamas. So, if they hate us because we support Israel, if they hate us because of our foreign policy, if they attacked us because we are in the Middle East, then why was the Muslim Brotherhood founded in 1928? In 1928, Israel didn't even exist. We had such an isolationist foreign policy that even in 1939, Newsweek magazine had on its front cover, country divided, 50% of Americans want to go to war with Hitler, and 50% of Americans said, we don't give a care what's going on in Europe, we have the jobs and the economy to worry about. That's how much of an isolationist policy we had. So why was the Muslim Brotherhood founded in 1928? The Muslim Brotherhood was founded to bring back the Islamic Caliphate, the Islamic Empire, and re-establish Sharia law worldwide. Because the Islamic Empire had ended only 5 years prior in Turkey by President Ataturk in 1994. The Islamic Empire ended less than 100 years ago. But shamefully, we in the West have such a short attention span and such little knowledge of history, it is shameful. Our students today, you take any high schooler in the United States and you ask them about World War II, and they wouldn't even know what to answer you, because for them, that is ancient history. And our veterans are still walking around amongst us, and our children today think that's ancient history. They cannot tell you detail about it. World War II. That's why the Muslim Brotherhood was founded. So why should we be concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States? We should be concerned because they have their eyes not only on Europe, not only on the Middle East, not only on the rest of the world, but also on North America. The Muslim Brotherhood wrote a plan in 1982. It's a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. In the counterterrorism circles, this plan became known as the project. What makes the project so unique is it gives tactics and proposals as to how to infiltrate the West, how to use our laws against us, how to use our open-mindedness against us, how to use our own multiculturalism against us. They even give buzzwords that you can use in the West to disarm Westerners, because when they hear such words, they just put their guard down. They talk about how to set up nonprofit organizations and human rights organizations and maintain the appearance of moderation in order to advance the radical Islamic agenda in the West. They talk about how to get democratically elected Muslims on all levels in the West, including government, NGOs, etc. They talk about how to place Muslim interns on all levels of government in the West in order to have an insider view of how politics and policy is done on the inside. The Muslim Brotherhood began implementing their plan in Europe. Remember, they wrote it in 1982. When you look at Europe today, Europe is no longer Europe. Europe has become Eurabia. The continent has morphed right before our own eyes in the last 20, 30 years. As I'm speaking to you right now, in Britain alone, there are 85 Sharia courts operating parallel to British courts. If you would have stopped a British man 20 years ago down the streets of London and told him that in 20 years you're going to have a different legal system operating in your country that's completely opposed to your democratic system, he would have told you you're nuts. You're crazy. In France, there are 725 no-go zones where French police cannot even enter because they are Islamic zones. If you would have stopped a man in Paris 20 years ago down the Champs-Élysées and told him that you're going to have over 700 no-go zones in France in 20 years, he would have told you, you lost your mind. Just as much as if you would have stopped an American on September 10th, 2001 on the streets of New York and told him, tomorrow, the World Trade Center is going to be down to the ground, rubble, because 19 men with box cutters are going to attack the Pentagon and bring down the World Trade Center. He would have told you, you are crazy. But here we are today. The reason why we in America are so concerned about this is because the Muslim Brotherhood wrote a plan for the destruction of the United States in 1991. Here is the plan. The plan was admitted into evidence in the largest terrorism trial ever in the history of the United States, where the United States sued the Holy Land Foundation trial in Dallas, Texas in 2007 and 2008, and this plan was admitted as evidence. Our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts to Muslim American and Muslim American organizations, raising millions of dollars in America and sending it overseas to support terrorism. The plan is titled مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية, written on 22/5/1991, an explanatory memorandum on the strategic goal for the group in North America. And I'm not going to read you all the plan. You will have access to it. I'll tell you how to get it at the end of my presentation. But I'm going to read you a paragraph of the plan so you'll have an idea of how organized in their thinking they are and what their plan for the United States. The title of this paragraph is Understanding the Role of the Muslim Brother in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan, which is the Arabic word for brothers, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Do they mince any words? Do they have a hidden agenda? Are they very clear in what they're saying? Yes, they are. But the most important page of this document is the last page. Because the last page lists 29 front Islamic organizations set up in the United States as a front for the Muslim Brotherhood in order to destroy our Western civilization from within and do it culturally, not militarily. You have Al-Qaeda wants to attack us militarily, but here's what these organizations are. Number one is ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. If this name sounds familiar to you, it's because they are now advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. We not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the White House talking to the ear of the president. It was actually the president of ISNA is the one who wrote President Obama's speech, which he delivered in Cairo when he first became president, his first address to the Islamic world. Number 2 on the list is the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republicans combined. And you wonder how we're losing our universities? But I'll touch on that later. Number 8 on the list is NATE, North American Islamic Trust, which now owns 90% of the deeds to the mosques and all the mosques in the United States. Number 22 on the list is IAP, Islamic Association for Palestine, which later became CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. And actually the reason CARE was founded was because they wanted like a kind of like an easy name, Council on American Islamic Relations, to kind of be like the spokesperson of the Muslim community so nobody would think they're a front for Hamas in the United States. In this plan, they discussed how they're going to infiltrate every segment of our society. They wrote a detailed plan on how they're going to influence the media, politics, publishing, education, every single area of our society that you can think of, establishing think tanks, everything. And at this point, I want to focus on my presentation on the education system, because the education is how they are brainwashing our future generations and changing the culture and the face of America. The Saudis started pumping millions of dollars into American universities, setting up Middle East study departments and political science departments, and appointing Arab professors who are anti-Israel, anti-America, to brainwash our students. And the way they have been able to do it is using a loophole called the Title VI program, which was founded by our government after World War II in order to teach American students about foreign languages and foreign cultures, especially those who want to get into the diplomatic field or the CIA or work for the State Department. That's how the Saudis, the Islamists, are able to funnel millions of dollars into our universities to brainwash our students. And they are teaching the students that America is too big, too strong, too powerful. America is oppressing the Islamic world, and that Israel is evil, and that the Islamic world is the underdog. And to give you an idea, here's the extent of the Saudi peddling that has taken place on our college campuses. Listen to these dollars. $20 million donated to the University of Arkansas by the King of Saudi Arabia. $22 million donated to Harvard University from 2 Saudi sheikhs linked to Al-Qaeda. 28.1 million went to Georgetown. 5 million to MIT. 1.5 million to Texas A&M. 5 million to Rodgers University. 5 million to Columbia. Other recipients of Saudi monies include UC Santa Barbara, Johns Hopkins University, Duke University, American University, UCLA, Howard University, and many others. You get the idea. From the Ivy Leagues down to the community colleges and everything in the middle, we pump the gas and they pump poison into the hearts and minds of our future generations. And that's why we must become energy independent tomorrow. The strategy worked so well on college campus. You know, people ask me all the time, Brigitte, why is the media so biased? I mean, my gosh, you know, if you're watching CNN, or God forbid, CNN International, you know, because, you know, when you go on a cruise ship and you're stuck and the only thing you can watch is CNN International, I know you all in Florida take a lot of cruises. You know, my husband, and I would be on a cruise and he would be watching TV and he would have his shoe in his hand, ready to throw it at the TV. And I would be, honey, we're on vacation. But it was like watching Al Jazeera in English. America is bad, Israel is evil, there was nothing good we can do. And I tell people, why are you surprised? Because for the last 16, 20 years, all these students graduating out of our universities being fed a steady diet of hate and resentment against America are today the news anchors, the news reporters, the news writers, the bureau chiefs, the policymakers, the foreign policy shapers. I mean, just look at our president. We don't have a commander-in-chief. We have an apologizer-in-chief. I don't care whether you're black or white, Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or anything. When you are the President of the United States, your #1 job is to be proud of your country when you're overseas. The strategy worked so well on college campuses that the Islamists decided, why wait until the kids get to college? Why don't we start with them in 6th and 7th grade in middle school? This way, by the time they get to college, they're 18 years old and they vote. And we have them in the palm of our hands. So in 1991, the Islam Project was launched, where they started providing consultants to America's top publishers who publish public school books, textbooks, history books, and social studies books, to teach on how all about Islam, or how Islam is taught at the public schools. The Islam Project was launched, and they started teaching a 3-week course. They started in California and in Florida, a 3-week course where students had to become Muslims, adopt Islamic names, memorize and recite verses from the Quran, and go to a mosque on a field trip to learn what it's like to be a Muslim. And when I started talking about this, people would say to me, especially after I did the research for my second book, They Must Be Stopped is the title of my second book, came out in 2008. And when I started doing the research, it was mind-boggling. So I started speaking in my book tour about this. And people would say to me, oh, Brigitte, you're exaggerating. That couldn't possibly be happening in our public schools. I mean, we have separation of church and state in our country. There's no way they're teaching this in the public schools. And I said, oh, really? There is nothing like show and tell. Here's the course. This is the course on Islam. This course was put out in 1991, copyrighted 1991 by a company called Interaction Publishers, Inc., doing business as Interact. Remember, this is 1991, 10 years prior to September 11th. So, here's the teacher instructions. That's how the course begins. And by the way, if you call the school, you won't be able to get this course because this is a teacher instructions. The reason why I have this course is because I got it from the Thomas More Law Center, who sued the Excelsior School in Byron, California for teaching this course, and this course was admitted as evidence in recovery. So here's how the teacher instructions start. From the beginning, you and your classmates will become Muslims. You will be a member of a caravan, and the teacher continues. Dressing as a Muslim and trying to be involved will increase your learning and enjoyment. Finally, trying your best at all tasks will guarantee you an excellent grade and a more enjoyable time. The teacher is already dangling the great carrot in front of the students. Here's a list of Islamic names that the students have to choose from. They've got boys' names and girls' names. Here are wisdom cards. These are cue cards for the students to memorize the Islam lesson. This is like the cue cards, like math, when children are studying their math or multiplication tables. To memorize their multiplication tables, they use cue cards. This is the same thing. They're called wisdom cards. Now, I'm going to use one card in particular with you as an example because this card deals with jihad. The reason why I chose this card that deals with jihad, because obviously jihad plays a major role in Islamic radicalism. After all, you have organizations named Islamic Jihad. The head of Islamic Jihad in America, Sami al-Aryan, was right here in Florida, remember? You have Islamic organizations called Al-Mujahideen. You have suicide bombers before they blow themselves up. They record videos about how they are dying in the path of jihad. You have Al-Qaeda always talking about jihad. So obviously jihad plays a major role in at least radical Islam and terrorism. But here's what our students are learning about jihad in public schools. A jihad is a struggle by Muslims against oppression, invasion, and injustice. And this is taught as a fact card. If these words sound familiar to you, it's because these are the talking points of Al-Qaeda and Islamic terrorists. Every time Al-Qaeda issues a press release against America as to why they're fighting America, what do they say? We are fighting invasion. We are fighting injustice. We are fighting occupation. We are fighting oppression. Anytime you hear a Palestinian suicide bomber recording a videotape before he blows himself up the next day, what does he say? Oh, I decided to become a freedom fighter because I am dying because I'm fighting oppression. I am fighting injustice. I am fighting occupation. So now what's happening is we are teaching our enemies talking points to our unsuspecting little Johnny and Sally in public schools in the United States paid for by our tax dollars. Do you see the brainwashing happening to our students right now? While our government is focusing on Al-Qaeda and military terrorism and this, that, and the other, look what has been happening in America in public schools since 1991, 20 plus years. You know, Hitler made a very important statement. Hitler said, "Give me the children, I will change society in 10 years." And that's exactly what he did. And we are seeing the same thing happen in America. And this is what I call stealth jihad, because that's exactly how they're brainwashing the students. And since I'm speaking at a church, I have to share with you this little prayer that the students have to analyze in the classroom. This is the Shahada prayer, which is the equivalent of the salvation prayer when somebody converts to Christianity and they say, I give my life, I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, etc. This is what someone has to say when they convert to Islam, al-Shahada. So the students have to analyze this prayer in the classroom. Praise be to Allah, Lord of creation, the compassionate, the merciful, King of judgment day. You alone we worship, and to you alone we pray for help. Did I mention this is public schools, paid for by our tax dollars, where we cannot even sing Christmas hymns and put a cross and say anything religious in the public schools? We don't even have Christmas holiday anymore. We have winter break. But we pray to Allah, you alone we worship, and you alone we pray for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, which is the Muslims, nor of those who incurred your wrath, which is the Jews, nor of those who have gone astray, which is the Christians and the atheists. This is in public schools. This course started as a 3-week course. Right now, it is weaved into our history books and social studies books to the point that the SOL testing, in order for students to pass the SOL testing, in order for them to go to college, 22 questions on the SOL test is out of this course. And this is taught now nationwide. So while our government is focusing and distracting your attention on military terrorist attack, this is how they are taking over our country and brainwashing our students. And this must stop. And I believe we need to throw political correctness in the garbage and start calling a spade a spade. People are afraid to speak up. They are afraid to criticize. They are afraid to be proud of our country. Like we got to the point in America today that if you criticize anything, or even if you are proud of America, like something is wrong with you, like we couldn't really be that proud because America's not that good. Well, I am sick and tired for those who apologize for America, who see nothing good in America. By golly, if America is that bad, we'll give them a one-way ticket to get out of here and back to whatever country they want. is not perfect. No country in the world is perfect. We all have our shortcomings. Countries just like people. But you know what? We came to this country because we wanted to make a better life for ourselves. Because we know we cannot find any place like America anywhere in the world. When I look around this room, I see a tapestry of color. Black, white, Hispanics, blondes, blue-eyed, brown skin, everybody. We came here from all over the world to be Americans because we wanted to become a fabric of this country, of this society, and be the best we can be. And I am sick and tired when I see people say, I'm an Italian American, and I'm an African American, and I'm a Lebanese American, and I'm a Chinese American. I am nothing but an American. And while I am on a roll, I believe English is the official language of the United States and shall remain so. We all came here and we all speak English. You know, this is what we are here about tonight. I'm not only here to share with you the problem, I'm also here to share with you solutions. I am here to inspire you. I am here to tell you what we are doing about it to change the course, the direction our country is heading. When I came to this country and I started speaking out, especially after September 11th, and I started educating millions of people. I mean, I would go on the radios, I would go on speaking tours, and I realized one question kept coming up. Now that I'm educated, what can I do? Give me something to do. And I learned very quickly that while education is important, education by itself is not sufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And that's when we launched Act for America in 2007. We launched Act for America and called it Act for America, not Wish for America, not Think about America, not Hope for America, but what? Act for America. Because without action, nothing happens. And I am here tonight to share with you how we can work together and take action tonight to change the course of history in our country. And what we are doing with Act for America to turn back the tide and the rise of radical Islam. And I would like to call Guy Rodgers on stage. Guy Rodgers is the Executive Director of Act for America. Guy Rodgers is going to come up and share with you what we are doing behind the scenes to change the direction of the country. And then I'm going to come back on stage and continue my presentation. And as Guy is coming up on stage, I want to share something with you about Guy Rodgers. I looked for an executive director for 2 years because I wanted to find somebody who has the moral clarity and the courage to stand up and say what needs to be said. I also wanted somebody who comes from a political background, a political strategist, because we are fighting a political war, and we cannot afford to lose this war. Guy Rodgers worked on 5 presidential campaigns as a political consultant and over 50 congressional and gubernatorial campaigns. And he's now my right arm with Act for America. Guy Rodgers, please come up on stage.
One of the things Brigitte didn't tell you is that one of the reasons it took her 2 years to find an executive director is that part of the job description is speaking publicly after her. You think you've got a tough job? I met Brigitte 6 years ago, excuse me, 6 years ago next month. And there are many things about Brigitte that I was very impressed with. I was impressed with her life story. I was impressed with her passion. I was impressed with her boldness and her courage to speak out on these issues. But one of the things that really caught my attention, coming from the background I come from, working in the political arena, organizing grassroots organizations at the state and national level, political strategy and so on, was that she had an intuitive understanding of how grassroots action can change the course of a country like ours. Better, in fact, I think, than many native-born Americans have. And that's important because I'm a person who, while I study a lot and I've absolutely immersed myself in this issue of Islam and the doctrines of Islam and radical Islam and terrorism, I know from my own experience that when you couple that type of understanding with the right kind of organized action, it is absolutely remarkable what even small groups of people can do. It doesn't take a majority to change the course of a country. It takes an organized, knowing where it's going, informed minority to change the course of a country. Now, right now, I think everyone in this auditorium would agree that America is facing a lot of challenges. Or is that an understatement? Across many fronts. In fact, the challenges are so great in some areas that we get the sense as we travel the country that many of the people in this country who right now more than ever need to be standing up and doing something about what they believe are discouraged. They're distracted by all the problems out there. Our enemy in radical Islam is taking advantage of this. How many Americans, for instance, know that in the last several years there have been at least 53 court cases decided in American courts applying Sharia law? How many Americans know that in the state of Texas alone there are an estimated 2,500 Hezbollah operatives? How many Americans know that this administration is systematically purging from all of its counterterrorism information, training materials, strategic assessments, any reference to radical Islam, jihad, anything closely related to that? As a matter of fact, John Brennan, who today is now the head of the CIA, is on record saying jihad is not this violent act. Jihad is a holy tenet of Islam for personal growth and struggle to become a better person. Somebody should have told him, you really need to read the life of Muhammad, because that's not what jihad was about. Tonight, we're going to, in the next few minutes that I have, we're going to share with you the things we are doing to change this course. Because, folks, if we came here tonight and just told you all the problems, you would leave going, well, that's just great. All I need is another message about problems facing America. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just turn the news off. Because you kind of look at it, and after a while you go, oh, gee, another problem. Well, here's the good news, folks. What we're doing in the fight against radical Islam is actually winning. I can't give you a lengthy laundry list tonight of all the things that we have done in the last 5 years, but I want to give you a handful to show you how the combination of our strategic approach and grassroots organization, and by the way, we have 260,000 members now and 765 local chapters in just 5 years of growth. I want to give you some examples of what we're doing to show you how this is working, and then tell you how we got here and what you can do to help us take the next steps to win more victories. 2 years ago, 3 of our chapter leaders, working together, discovered an online jihadist who was a student enrolled at Penn State University. They reported him to the FBI. He was arrested. Nobody heard about this in America. And that's the thing about when you foil a terrorist attack. People don't know about it. We know for a fact that at least 2 terrorist attacks have been foiled in this country by virtue of Act for America members doing the right thing because they saw something and went to the right authorities and helped to foil those attacks. How many lives were saved as a result of that? No way of knowing. But because of the network we have of eyes and ears all over the country, somebody you know just might have been saved as a result. Yeah, go ahead. 3 years ago, in the state of Texas, this was the first time this had ever happened. Act for America chapter leaders led an effort to put new language in the Texas Republican Party platform that reads as follows. We urge the Texas legislature and United States Congress to enact legislation prohibiting any jurisdiction from allowing any substitute or parallel system of law, specifically but not limited to Sharia law, to be recognized, which is not in accordance with the Constitution of Texas or of the United States of America. That became part of the Texas Republican platform. We have since then, Act for America chapter leaders and members have gotten language similar to that passed in the party platforms of Kansas, Washington, Georgia, Oklahoma, and we were instrumental in actually getting language in the National Republican platform last year that said foreign law which infringes on constitutional rights shall not be considered by judges in this country. 3 years ago, I don't know if you all remember this, the Obama administration had this bright idea to move Guantanamo Bay detainees to prisons on American soil. You all remember that? One of the places they picked was a little town in Michigan called Standish. Well, our Act for America chapters in that area got wind of this, teamed up with local citizens. They stormed the city council, who had voted 5-0 to accept the detainees because they said it'll create jobs for the prison. And in 2 town meetings, hundreds of people turned out and said, "What part of no do you all not understand?" At the end of the day, the publicity got so bad that the Obama administration quietly withdrew this effort, and those detainees never went to Standish, Michigan. We have gotten passed in 3 states now, Tennessee, Arizona, and Kansas, a law known as ALAC, which stands for American Laws for American Courts. What this law does is prohibit state judges from applying foreign law when doing so infringes on the constitutional rights of any parties to a case. Well, it does impact Sharia law on occasion because Sharia law, in many respects, infringes on constitutional rights, especially for women and children. Now, not only did we get those laws passed, and by the way, in Kansas, we generated 30,000 phone calls and emails to the Kansas legislature to get that bill passed. That's a lot of emails in a state the size of Kansas, folks. 4 months after it passed in Kansas, a judge had a case brought before him to rule and was asked to apply Sharia law. He specifically rejected that request and referred to the ALAC legislation we had gotten passed in Kansas 4 months earlier. That is a victory. And right now, that bill is going through the Florida state legislature. We got close last year. We got it passed in the House. Had some political shenanigans the last day of the session of the Senate, backroom deals. We're back at it again this year. We think we're going to be able to get it through a few more states this year, and we're going to keep at it year in and year out until state after state after state has erected a firewall against Sharia law, so what has happened to Europe will not happen here. A week ago Friday, In South Dakota, the governor signed a bill called the Free Speech Defense Act. What this law does is protect authors from intimidation lawsuits filed in other countries that don't have the same free speech protections we have here. This was the 9th state to do this. We've been involved in almost every one, because one of the greatest threats coming from radical Islam is the threat to free speech because of their demand that no speech be allowed that is critical of Islam. How many Americans know that a poll done in October of last year found that 58% of Muslims in America believe that any speech critical of Islam or Muhammad should be prohibited? And 45% of those surveyed said it should be a crime in America to say anything publicly deemed offensive to Islam. You think something like the Free Speech Defense Act is important? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, oh, and my last one. By the way, we could spend a lot of time on this tonight, and the video you didn't get to see had some of those on there. Brigitte mentioned the education issue. We took this on 3 years ago. I'm a former public school teacher. I know the power and influence that the curricula and books and teachers have in the classroom. We commissioned a crack research team to analyze 38 commonly used textbooks from 6th to 12th grade in American public schools and how they treated the issue of Islam. The result of the report was a result of the research was a report called Education or Indoctrination: The Treatment of Islam in 6th through 12th grade American Textbooks. What we found was that, and if you know anything about the history of Islam, you're going to be surprised by this. When Muslims conquered other societies, they treated the people they conquered with tolerance. Jews and Christians had full religious freedom. In discussions of 9/11, the textbooks almost never mentioned that these were jihadist Muslims. It would be like rewriting the textbooks in 1951, talking about an attack on December 7th, 1941, and neglecting to mention that this was the Imperial Navy of Japan. How can those students who today weren't old enough to remember 9/11 understand what happened in 9/11 if that's left out of the textbooks? Well, we didn't just do a report. What happens to most reports? What do you think happens to them? They get stuck on a shelf somewhere, they gather dust, or they're sitting on a computer hard drive. No, no, no. That's not how we do things. We mailed that executive summary I just held up to 70,000 state and local school board members across the country. And our plan for the next 3 years is to testify at State Book Selection Committee hearings, is to put pressure on school boards to bring this report up over and over and over again so that these textbooks will get revised and Islam will actually be treated in the manner in which history treats it, not in the manner in which political correctness would like to treat it. And here's just one example of how that's already paying off. One of our chapter leaders in Washington State helped a granddaughter of one of her friends do a report on Islam. And she was looking at the textbook, the chapter leader, and said, "This is full of errors." And it was in our report. She said, "Here's the error, here's the error, here's the error." So the student incorporated that into her report, that the textbook had a lot of errors in it. That takes a lot of guts. And then she gave it to the principal. That really takes a lot of guts. And the principal pulled the book from usage in the school. As you can see, had to get my Marco Rubio water there. As you can see, we don't just talk about the problem here. We're doing something about it. And I have a question. All those things I just laid out to you, and by the way, that's just a fraction. We have on our website, actforamerica.org, a victory timeline that lists dozens of these types of things going back to 2008. Would those things have happened if there had been no Act for America? What do you think? No. You know why? It's very simple. It's the paralysis of feeling like I'm the only person. When you feel like you're the only one who's going to stand up and fight something, it's the rare soul who stands up and actually does. But if you feel part of something bigger than yourself, and part of something that's organized, and part of something that is absolutely making a difference, you're empowered, you're encouraged, you're inspired, and you do something. That's why we got 30,000 emails and phone calls to Kansas legislators, because those people knew they weren't alone. That's the power of what we're doing here, folks. This is what this is all about. And the reason we've gotten to this point is because over the last 5 years, as Brigitte and I have traveled this country, and we've got the frequent flyer miles to prove it. I mean, you know you travel a lot when you know where every restroom is in every airport. And we do. And as we have traveled the country and delivered this message, 5 years ago, it was just a vision. We didn't have any successes 5 years ago. We were just starting out. But people heard, and they were encouraged, and they got involved, and they said, yes, I will do something. I'm just one person, but I want to be one of many. And because they took action, we grew. We grew as an organization. We grew as a number of members. We grew number of chapters. We grew, and we're winning more and more victories every year. And here's the thing, folks. If we keep growing, those victories are not only going to increase, they're going to get bigger. Our goal is to eventually have 1 million members and 2,500 chapters. Our goal is to be the NRA of national security. So that brings me to Act for America. Because, folks, if you walk out of here tonight, if you hear what we're saying and you go, this is something we can fight back on. This is something that is actually winning. This is something we can do something about. But if you leave and go, well, great message, it was inspiring, but you don't take action in one of the ways I'm going to challenge you to take action tonight, you might as well have been staying home watching Dancing with the Stars tonight. That's not what we're about. We're about getting out and each of us doing a little. We have a slogan in our organization. When everybody does a little, together we accomplish a lot. It's the power of the grassroots numbers. So, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to pull this form out from under your chair. It's the one that has the boxes on it. If you'll pull that out and wave it at me, please, when you've got it in your hands. And that's not a flag of surrender. That's not a white flag of surrender there. How many of you in here get our email alerts we send out 3 to 4 times a week? Okay. Now, you know what? That's only about probably 1/15 of the people who are here. Okay? If you want to know about the types of things I'm talking about tonight, these victories, the things that Brigitte talked about, the problems, you're not going to hear that in the news, folks. Not even Fox News. You won't. So the first step in taking action is to become better informed and be part of this grassroots citizen action network. So what I'm going to ask you to do is very first thing, upper right-hand corner, where it says ACT email newsletter. If you're not getting our emails, I want you to check that box. It's free, costs you nothing. We don't inundate you with 50 emails a week. But if you are not on that list, later in this spring, when we have to send emails out to people in Florida saying, please contact your state legislator so we can get ALAC passed, you won't know about it because you're not on our list. So, check that box. If you don't have a pen, borrow one from your neighbor. If your neighbor doesn't have a pen, prick your finger and do it in blood. I don't care. We just want the information. As long as it's legible, we don't care how you got it on there. Now, the second thing, if you would like to get a little more involved than just getting an email, check the second box that says join an ACT chapter. We'll take your name and we will forward that to chapter leaders in your area so that you can get involved in the local chapter of ACT for America. And then the third one on there, and this one is for those who, and every time we do this, there are people out there who go, I really, really am getting this. I want to do something more. Okay? You check that box that says lead an ACT for America chapter. Now, you may have never done something like this before. Don't let that deter you. Some of our most effective chapter leaders said the same thing to us 4 years ago. One of our most effective chapter leaders, Susan Watts, she lives in the Houston area. She started this in her kitchen. Today, she has one of the most effective chapters in the country, and she mentors 85 other chapter leaders. And she says, you know what? If I can do it, you can do it. So, we'll teach you how to do it. We'll give you a packet of information. We'll hook you up with a mentor so that you can do this if this is what is in your heart to do. And you can become one of those chapter leaders. And we can use a lot more of them in Florida, folks. I don't know if you realize this, but Florida is a real hotbed for radical Islam. Tampa, Orlando, the Atlantic coast. When Brigitte mentioned Samuel Arian, anybody remember what university he was actually teaching at? What was it? University of South Florida. That's not too far from here. It's right in your backyard, folks. Then what I want you to do is I want you to fill the rest of it out. Print your email address, your first name, last name, city, state, zip code, and your phone number. And we're going to then, in a moment, pass these to the aisle, and we're going to take these back to our headquarters and enter them in. While you're filling these out, I want to tell you a quick little anecdote. So don't feel bad if your head's down filling it out. That means I know you're filling it out, and that's what I want to see. But I want to tell you a little quick story. A year ago, a man came to trial in Pennsylvania. I think it was Mechanicsburg. I think it was the town. A Muslim man who was accused of assaulting another man at a Halloween parade the previous October. The other man was an atheist who dressed up for the Halloween parade in what he called a zombie Muhammad costume. Now, that's not something I would do, and I'm not even sure what a zombie Muhammad looks like. This fascination with zombies in America today is really kind of interesting. I don't know what that's all about. Zombies, vampires, you know, it's like interesting. But the great thing about America and the First Amendment is he could do that. Well, a police officer saw the Muslim man jumped in the crowd, assaulted the zombie Muhammad. A police officer saw it, wrote up a report. Somebody got it on video. This was an open and shut case, folks. This was a criminal assault, open and shut. Went before the judge, and the judge did something very interesting. He spent his whole time lecturing not the Muslim who committed the assault, but the man who dressed up as zombie Muhammad. He said things like, "You've taken the First Amendment too far. There are places in the world where if you had done this, you could be put to death." Yes, we know that. That's why we don't want Sharia law here. And then refused to admit the videotape into evidence, ignored the policeman's eyewitness testimony, and dismissed the charges. That's just one small case. How many more like that will happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years if we sit on our couches and go, wring our hands, aren't things terrible? So please pass those forms to the aisle, and we have volunteers that will pick them up. Please pass those to the aisle. And as soon as they're done, I've got one more action item to cover, and then we're going to bring Brigitte up for closing remarks. We all need to be encouraged now and then, don't we? I'll tell you what, I have a 24-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter. Just had my first granddaughter 3 weeks ago. My son is an Air Force pilot. Thank you. Yes, I almost popped 3 buttons off when I say that. And my daughter is an aspiring ballet dancer. Now, I share that with you to personalize that because a lot of the problems we're talking about tonight, if they're left unchecked, will probably not reach fruition in most of our lifetimes. They won't get that bad like they are in Europe in many of our lifetimes. But who is going to be behind having to deal with those problems? Our children and our grandchildren. When we can do something about it, we need to do something about it. And as I pointed out to you tonight, we're not just talking about it, we're winning. We're making a difference. Now, what I want to do at this point in my presentation is I need a volunteer. Now, I need a very special volunteer. This is going to be a very rare person, someone who's actually got a pocket full or purse full of change. Anybody have a handful of change? Where? Okay. Let's see if it's enough. It's got to be enough. Let's see. No, I need more than that. This is how I augment my salary. Go around the country, and everywhere I go, I just gather up change. Spare change, spare change. Okay. Now, no, I've got it. I don't want to mix them up. You'll see why in a minute. I'm going to take out Who gave me the change? Who was the one who gave me the change? Sir. Okay. I'm going to hand you back that. Okay? Would you look at the change and tell me how much I took out? You can't tell, can you? No idea. Okay. I took out 2 quarters. Now, there's a reason I did this. 50 cents doesn't buy very much, does it? It buys a postage stamp for now. But you really can't buy much with 50 cents anymore, except if you invest it in Act for America. And the thing about 50 cents is, as this man realized when I took it out, is if I had taken that out and not said anything to him, he would have never even known the difference. Any of you men keep change in a can on your dresser? Any of you do that like I do? Okay. I'm waiting for the day that I got little grandkids around who come around the change and kind of go, Papa isn't looking. Do you think I'll miss that change? No. No. You know what, folks? Even in an economy like ours, most of us lose, throw away, or lose track of that much money every day and more. Is that true? And we don't mean to. It's just, especially change. I mean, for Pete's sake, it's change. Now, why do I use this example? It's simple. We have a program called Patriot Partners. These are people who are joining with us and giving 50 cents, 60 cents, 70 cents a day. Oh, by the way, I guess I need to give your money back here. Keep it? No. No, what? I just got to take it through airport security, and that's a pain. That's why I don't carry change. These Patriot Partners are the absolute backbone of this organization, folks. These are faithful people. Some of them have been doing this for 4 years. And they're giving $15, $17, $20 a month. Which, I mean, what does that break down to? What's $15 a month? 50 cents a day. What's $20 a month? 67 cents a day. They don't miss it. But let me tell you something. Our goal in the next 5 to 10 years is to have 20,000 people as Patriot partners. You know what that adds up to in a year? That's $5 million, folks. Where can you take 50 cents a day and turn that into 5 million? If you have a financial advisor that has that kind of program working for you, I want to talk to that person. It's the greatest investment you'll ever make. Because when you invest in what we're doing with the finances, you're helping give us the ammunition to win these victories. Because folks, we have volunteers, we have manpower, but when you get right down to it, you need one other thing, don't you? You need money. And we're not asking you tonight to help us out with a check with 5 zeros behind it. Now, if you are able to write such a check, please come talk to me afterwards. I said this about 4 years ago in one of our early events in Houston, and a man came up to me and gave me a check for $5,000. Made out to Act for America. And I thought, gee, I guess I need to make sure I mention this everywhere I go, because you never know. Where were we last week? In Houston again. Houston. A woman gave us a check for $1,000. Most of us can't do that. But most of us can give $15 a month. Or $18 a month. We can do that. And be part of a growing number of people all across America who are saying, I can do something about this threat and help them win even more victories next year and the year after and the year after. So what I'd like you to do is get this form out. That one's also underneath your chair. And in the top block on the front is the Patriot Partner block. And we have 2 levels as options. Now, here's the neat thing, folks. You become a Patriot Partner, you're empowering us as an organization, but we're also going to empower you. We're not going to just ask you to give to help empower what we're doing. We're going to give you resources back. Here's an example of the resources right here. One of them is, and this is hard to do with a mic in my hand, let's see here. This is a copy of Brigitte's book. If you look on there, those options, those 2 Patriot Partner options, you can get a copy of Brigitte's book that she will autograph tonight, right over there after this is over. She'll personally autograph it for you, for your contribution. Another option is this DVD, Losing Our Sons. This is a very powerful DVD to show your friends. It's a true story of 2 families. One family, Southern Baptist, whose son converted to Islam, got radicalized at Tennessee State University, went to Yemen to get trained as a jihadist, and came back and shot and killed an Army private in front of the Little Rock Training Center. And it's about 2 families losing their sons. And here's the cool thing in this documentary. It shows them, the 2 men, coming at an event and embracing after the event. And it was an event put on by the Nashville chapter of Act for America. This is a very powerful DVD. Here's another resource. Understanding the Threat of Radical Islam. This is a book for young people, teenagers. 64 pages. It has illustrations. It covers everything from jihad to Ayatollah Khomeini. And this is a way to counter some of the stuff they're getting in the public schools. You can get a copy of this, also autographed by Brigitte. So these are the kinds of resources we're making available tonight, if you choose to be a Patriot Partner. Now, we know that not everyone, for whatever reason, is going to choose to be a Patriot Partner. We encourage you to do it. We have about 500 people here tonight. I would love to see 40 people be Patriot Partners tonight. That's only about 1 in 12. I'm hoping one of you will do that, and you'll be one of those 40. For others of you, we have another option, and that's the contributing member option. This is a single gift. You make a one-time gift tonight. There are different options there, different levels, and we also have the same resources available for each of those levels. You check off the one that fits for you, and then in the back, you fill out the information. If you're going to do by credit card, which, by the way, that's the only way you can do Patriot Partners by credit card. We don't want to send out reminders. We don't want to send the mail. We don't want to do that. It costs too much time, too much money, and we don't want to nag you. And you put your information on the back, and here's how this is going to work. When we're done here, for those of you that filled these forms out, going through those doors back there, there are going to be 3 tables over on the right side over there where you create 6 lines. There's going to be people out there directing traffic. There'll be 6 lines where you can pick up the materials. Then for those of you who get those 2 books, one of those 2 books or both, to get autographed, you simply come back in, come down, and create a line over here, and Brigitte will be autographing the books over there. I want to close with this. This is a book I'm reading right now called Battle for Our Minds, Western Elites, the Terror Threat. This is a really, really good book. I would recommend you getting a copy of this. Battle for Our Minds by Michael Woodlansky. Here's something I was just reading on the plane today coming in. He says, almost all wars reach a stage where the will to win determines the ability to win. And this is especially true of a terror war. This is especially true of a violent and stealth jihad war. That's what we're at war with. When one side loses heart, it gives up well before it is physically defeated. Folks, if we're going to save America from this threat, it's going to be you. It's going to be you. It's going to be the good-hearted, patriotic Americans across the country like you. And as Ronald Reagan said, if not us, who? If not now, when? Thank you very much.
And I want to thank each and every one of you here, especially those who decided to stand with us financially tonight. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve my country, because without your support, I will not be able to travel the nation and educate as many people as possible and give interviews on television and radio as many as possible and invest my time to do this. And I want you to know, by the way, I was talking with the pastor earlier behind the scenes. Do you know that when you see people like me on television, we don't get paid for that? Anytime you see me on TV giving a radio interview or a TV interview, I don't get paid for that. That's my investment in my time to educate my countrymen and women. And I want you to know that when Guy and I travel and speak, like what we are doing here tonight, I did not get paid an honorarium. It didn't cost the church a dime to bring me. We paid for our own expenses, our own flights, our own hotels, our own rental car, and we go from city and city doing this because we want to invest in your community. And we hope that by doing these events, we would be able to recoup our expenses and have enough money left over in the pot to fight the good fight that is to save our country.